G-Man Boxing. Do you know what I mean? Every single live he donates. I see him on other lives donating. He's got the bag on it.
Alright, people, midweek report time. Day later tonight, well, today, because it's quite late now again recording this. Have a quick look on screen there. That was an interview I did with a guy called Yemi. His channel will be linked in the description. It was an hour long interview, talked about me and basically just starting out on YouTube. There's always some boxing talk in there as well, of course. You gotta have boxing talk in there. But go over there if you want to have a listen. I think I've told the story on other channels. I've never told it on this channel, but I've told it on other channels before. Story about how I got started in YouTube and what inspired me. Go over there, have a listen, give him a little subscribe as well. And now we will talk boxing. So I was thinking, like, what do we have? Like, what is there to talk about? You know, kind of. I didn't want the video to go on too long, but it's a report, so I want it to go on a bit. Well, Eddie Hearn gave an interview with MMA Fighting, and he's been talking about Anthony Joshua versus Alexander Usyk, the rematch. And I'm going to quote Eddie Hearn here, verbatim. That's the fight AJ wanted. When I sat down with him about step aside, he just said, I wonder I wouldn't be surprised if he did say this actually, but I hope to God this isn't his mindset. I really do. I hope to God this isn't his mindset. I'll beat Usyk. Eddie said, you should have started working with your new trainer yet. You haven't started working with your new trainer yet. He said, I'll beat him without a trainer. Now I wonder, is that just front? Is that just, talk from AJ? Because as we are, like, AJ, I don't know where his head's at. I've said this once, I'll say it again. I do not know where his head's at, where he is mentally. I would like to just kind of jump into his head and just see what is actually going on in there, just to get a gauge of it, because to me it's just like, I don't even know, like, at this stage. And like, some people would say, like, when AJ will be, saying things, and like, for example, in that interview he gave in Dubai where he kind of contradicted himself in one sense. He was saying no step aside, then he was open, kind of stuff like that. People were saying, well, why do you like talk about that, but you won't talk about Tyson Fury whenever he does it? And I say, well, that's because, simple as, that's in Fury's character to do that, but with AJ it's out of character. And when a fighter's acting out of character, it's an eyebrow raiser. Look, it's likely he's gonna, and the fact that, look, I genuinely thought last week we might get an announcement of a new trainer, but we're still waiting on that. The Dillian Whyte Tyson Fury situation is ongoing. Obviously, I read on that report yesterday. Eddie Hearn's actually talked about it here. He's actually insisted that Dillian Whyte is going to take the Tyson Fury fight, despite his silence following the purse bid, which is very, it's strange that he's being so quiet. But he says this shot is the shot he's been waiting for. There's no conversations going on. Shall we look into another direction? This is the fight. So Eddie Hearn basically saying that Dillian Whyte, it is going to be him versus Tyson Fury next. He's almost pretty much confirming that there. Look, I said it once, I'll say it again. What other route does Dillian Whyte have to go? Because let's just look at this in a different. Let's look at this, right? Say Dillian Whyte, hypothetically now, say he decides, I'm not fighting Tyson Fury, but I want to get a title shot somehow, some way. It's not any easier to get a title shot over someone else, or to put yourself in a mandatory position. For example, you go down the IBF route, Filip Hrgović is a tough fight for Dillian Whyte, it is. You go down the WBO route, you've Joyce. I picked Joyce over Dillian Whyte. You go down the WBA route, that's a bit all over the place. I think they're ordering Hellenius versus Hughie Fury, which I'll talk about now in a wee bit. But you look at even the top 10, top 15 of heavyweight, there's tricky fights there. Like, you might look down the rankings and you might look and see Frank Sanchez is slightly lower down than, we'll say, like, Joseph Parker or someone like that. But Frank Sanchez, tough fight. I don't see it getting any easier for Dillian Whyte. I think that he's got to take this fight. I think he will take it. I genuinely do. At this stage now, I genuinely do think this fight will happen next. I would be surprised if it didn't, but if it didn't, I'll say I was wrong. But I do think at this stage it's going to happen. It's just, some people have been speculating that maybe Dillian Whyte is quiet because, as far as he's concerned, he's getting, I don't want to say low ball is the wrong word, probably getting the short end of the stick is a better word, and maybe he just feels what's the point in promoting this. So let Fury do all the talking. It's going to be on, probably BT Sports, so why don't I just let him do the talking until I absolutely have to, but I'll still turn up on fight night. So potentially that could be what's going on. It's interesting. I do wonder when, look, say they announce the press conference, say they announce this fight, press conference happens in, say, a fortnight's time. I could see Dylan Whyte getting animated then at the press conference with Fury. I could see that happening. Definitely. But in terms of other news, we'll stick with the heavyweights. I've got two interesting ones here. The first one is that WBA have apparently ordered Robert Helenius versus Hughie Fury. I don't know, is that for mandatory status with the WBA super title, which is currently held by Alexander Usyk, or what way that exactly is, because it's a bit all over the shop with regular, and it's a bit all over the place. But Hughie Fury versus Helenius is actually a decent little scrap. It is. Helenius has a new lease of life following on from his wins over Adam Kalnacki. He really did put a beat, especially the rematch. I mean, that was bad. He really put a beating on Adam Kalnacki in that rematch. Terrible beating. He really did. I was worried about Kalnacki in that rematch. I really was during the fight. He was taking an awful lot of punishment in that rematch. Holy God. And that's a worry, is when he's getting hit. Like, Helenius is a puncher, man. He can bang. You're taking shots clean like that off him. It's not good for you. It's not good for your health. But Helenius versus Fury, interesting. I would side with Hughie Fury. Hughie Fury has shown a good chin in his career. He has, when he has got tagged. But Helenius is he's a banger. Helenius is very limited, but punching power is definitely an element that he has. Tremendous punching power. So him against Fury would be interesting. I would imagine Hughie Fury would win that fight, probably take it on points. But I'd be intrigued to watch it now, I have to say. I would be. And sticking with heavyweights, here we have Joseph Parker's manager David Higgins has revealed that Joyce's team have reached out and said they are going to make an offer for a potential heavyweight fight in May. Parker versus Joyce. I would imagine they will. Well, I would imagine WBO would probably put an interim title on the line, wouldn't they not? And isn't Parker quite highly ranked with WBO, former champion, of course, with them. Joyce versus Parker. Now, I like that. I like that fight. I think that fight could be that fight could be fun. If right now, although Joseph Parker is looked a lot better in the Chisora rematch, he should have got Chisora out of there. There's still things that need to be worked on. I believe definitely they need to get more of that killer instinct instilled in Joseph Parker for definite, because I really felt like after, say, the 4th, 5th round, he should have really got Chisora out of there. And the scorecards were disturbingly close in that fight, and that does make you wonder if Parker hadn't have got, because I think one of the knockdowns shouldn't have been called. Without those, say, like 2 knockdowns, God knows what would have happened. Against Joe Joyce, I'm going to be frank, I think Joe Joyce would outwork him. I think there's a good chance Joe Joyce might outwork Joseph Parker, and Parker can definitely punch. He's not feather fisted, but we know Joe Joyce, I mean, he has a tremendous chin, the juggernaut. He's called that for it. Joe Joyce is just, I mean, he is just he is a freak of nature, isn't he? Like, people would say, like, he's very heavy. He's naturally, though. Like, I mean, Joe Joyce doesn't need to artificially inflate himself. Like that, he is just that big. He's huge. He's a massive man. He's very physically strong, and he would ragdoll most heavyweights. It's crazy, the strength of Joe Joyce. But I think in that scenario, Joe Joyce might outwork him. He might, but it'd be a very good fight. I think the hand speed of Parker would look very good on show against someone like Joe Joyce. Well, I'd love to see that. I think it'd be a great fight. Personally, I think that fight could actually potentially catch fire. So we have that. Kambosos. He said he's either going to fight Devin Haney or Lomachenko next in Australia. Full stop from the horse's mouth. So Kambosos saying either Haney. If you wanted me, if you said to me, gee, here's £5, who do you think he's going to fight next? Out of those two, I would say more than likely he'll fight Haney. I would say that more than likely, if you wanted me to put a bet on it, I would say more than likely he would fight Haney. Sticking with Australia, Tim Tszyu could be ready to make his US debut against Terrell Gusha, if I'm saying the name wrong, on the undercard of Castano versus Charlo, the rematch. Tim Tszyu is obviously the mandatory, he is the mandatory for the WBO. So he'd face the winner, whether it be Castano or Charlo. Tim Tszyu in America, I've been very impressed with Tim Tszyu. I haven't had a chance to cover any of his fights on the channel because of they're on during the day here, and they're on during the week as well in Australia. Like they're normally at like 12 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday, which is hard to do a review of it, especially if I'm not home. But I've been impressed with what I've been seeing from Tim Tszyu. He looks very good. You know, I'm really impressed with what I've seen from Tim Tszyu so far. So him making his US debut, it would take him out of his comfort zone in Australia. I don't think it would really. I think Tim Tszyu will be fine in that regard. He strikes me as someone who has just that natural ability and confidence to be able to go to a different country if it's outside his backyard and perform adequately. I really do think he will. So we'll keep an eye on him. What else we have here? A quote here again from Eddie Hearn on Canelo's options. Listen to this. I see Gennady Golovkin as a much more brutal fight than Jamal Charlo. I see Dmitry Bivol as a much more technically tricky fight than Charlo. But Charlo's also a great fighter. I think Charlo's the easiest fight out of the three. I disagree. I think the Triple G fight is the easiest out of the three. I do. I don't... Look, I will take the Triple G fight for what it is if it happens. Obviously, Eddie Hearn is hoping that Canelo gets a 2-fight deal, because the fight with Charlo is a 1-fight deal with PBC. He can go anywhere thereafter. As for the two other fights, they are obviously Triple G and Bivol. They'd be on the zone with Eddie Hearn. The Bivol fight would be very interesting. I'd be interested to see that. In terms of the Triple G fight, like I said, I take it for what it is, but it's not the same fight it was in 2018, 2017, when we had a much fresher Triple G. This is Triple G hasn't fought since December 2020. Been inactive, and is he 40 this year, or has he already turned 40? I forget Triple G. How old is Triple G? I'll just check his age real quick there, because Triple G ain't getting any younger. How old is he? He is 30. He's 40 on the 8th of April, to be exact. So by the time that fight comes around, if it happens this year, he would be 40 years old. So I don't know. Like I just think with Triple G, the first two fights were good. You know, they were. I take a third fight for what it is, but I'd be cognizant of the fact that this isn't the Triple G of 2017, 2018. It's a much older Triple G, and you know, I think Canelo would win that a lot more comfortably than he did the first. Or he didn't win the first one. He shouldn't have won the first one. It was a draw, but Triple G nicked it. He did. When I go back and watch it, Triple G won that. He won that fight. But the rematch, I gave that to Canelo, actually, believe it or not. I gave it 115, 113 to Canelo. Though it was a very close fight, I wouldn't have an issue if you gave it to Triple G. But I felt Canelo won the rematch personally. I thought he just nicked it. Yes, I thought he just nicked it. We also had the press conference for Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano. So that is happening on April the 30th. That is a good fight. No, that is a good fight. I do like that fight. I think Amanda Serrano was going to win. I think that Katie Taylor has been looking old as of late. You know, that Sharapova girl she fought there before Christmas, while Sharapova was a looker, that was pretty much all she brought. She didn't bring any real amazing skill or anything like that. And the Katie Taylor of about 5 years ago, you reckon, would have stopped her. Instead, she went the distance with her, and there was times in there where she didn't look great. I think Amanda Serrano, I think she's going to win this fight, in my opinion. Interesting one here from Mike Coppinger. He's saying that Artur Beterbiev versus Joe Smith Jr. reportedly close. So we're getting a unification light heavyweight, lads. It's claimed financial terms are not yet agreed by Smith Jr. Was it not Smith Jr.? Because remember they were talking about doing this fight not long after Joe Smith won his actual thing, the W title. Not long after, I had to think there for a sec. Not long after Joe Smith Jr. won his title last April, were they not talking about doing this fight? And was it not Joe Smith Jr. who did he say he was injured, or did he say something else? But basically, he was meant to fight Callum Johnson instead. Now, obviously, unifications trump mandatories. With the way Warren and Tunde and Jai have been talking, they are implying that Yard is next in line as a potential mandatory. Obviously, if it's a unification between Beterbiev and Smith, you'd imagine that will get pushed back. Out of two, wow, I mean, it's a great fight. I mean, fireworks. You will get fireworks in that fight. You really will. But I'd still favour Beterbiev. And that'd be interesting to see if Yard would take because they were off Beterbiev years ago. I think it was only after Beterbiev won the IBF title. Or was he? Yeah, no, it was just after he won it. And they turned that down. Now that's fair due, because that was, I think, 2018. Yard was like they were looking for Kovalev because as Tunde said, Timon was everything. Timon would have been way off in 2018 to fight Beterbiev. Jesus, that would have been way off in terms of timing. Jess Bam Rodriguez will now take on Carlos Cuadras because Swiatek Whtye is no longer on that card. Damn. So he's going to step up in weight, obviously, as well. He's been campaigning at flyweight. Now, Cuadras, it's an interesting one with Cuadras because after he lost to Chocolatito back in 2016, he just didn't look right in several fights. But yet, when he fought Estrada both times, he was able to raise his game, right? Because he's had some real, poor performances. And I think he lost to, did he lose to McWilliams Rio? I think he lost that fight. I'm sure he did. And he's had some real lackluster performances. But when he's come to when his opponent has been there like Estrada, he's risen to the occasion. Obviously, he was stopped by Estrada last time, but he had Estrada down in that fight as well. And obviously, the first fight was very close. That first fight was brilliant. It was a really good fight. If you've ever seen Estrada versus Cuadras run, I recommend you go and watch it. It was a brilliant fight. Brilliant fight. That was on the undercard of Gonzalez versus Rumvasai 2. Brilliant fight. Really, really good fight that was. Estrada won, clearly. But it was competitive the whole way through. Very competitive. And they actually, as I can spoil it, they announced the score wrong. So they actually they gave it to Cuadras. Like, that's who Michael Buffer said won the fight. And he only realised that after that he said the wrong winner. It was actually Estrada who won. Great fight. But I wonder how Cuadras will take that. If Cuadras has anything left, it's going to be a competitive fight. But I reckon Bam Rodriguez should get through Cuadras. He should, but that's going to be interesting. In terms of fights we have coming up this weekend as well, obviously with Eubank Jr. versus Liam Williams, a fight again, which I'm looking forward to seeing. The preview and prediction video has done quite well on that. It's going to be interesting. I don't know if I'll be home all evening on Saturday. I'll review the fight, of course, but I don't know if I'll be able to do a live watch along. Watch the space with that, but for sure we'll get reviews of it, and I'll probably maybe even do a live after, depending on how it goes and if there's any controversy or anything like that. But looking forward to that. Obviously, Keith Thurman. I haven't done a prediction video. I am going to. That's why it's in the thumbnail. But I'm going to talk about it a bit here. Thurman versus Barrios. For me, right, Keith Thurman. It's not just that he needs to win this fight. He needs to win this fight well. Lest we forget, this is a man who's had 3 fights in 5 years. It will be 5 years early March that he fought Danny Garcia. It was on the same night as Whtye won. Alright, be 5 years come what March. Alright? And since then, he has had 2 fights. So since the 5th of March, he's had 2 fights. Yes, I'll admit, he's had injuries. He has had injuries, but it's not always been injured. 2020, 2021. 2020 was worse than 2021 in terms of boxing, getting fights out there. But fighters still fought. 2021, people were fighting throughout the year, and Thurman was still inactive. It will have been over 2 years since he lost to Manny Pacquiao. Alright? 2 fights in 5 years is not good enough. And I don't know what Thurman has left. Right, I think that those 5 years, yes, I'll admit there was injuries during it, but there was also times he wasn't injured. Right, and even prior to the Danny Garcia, there was, I think, a stretch of 2 years where he was fighting once a year. I wonder if Thurman has wasted his best years. I think Thurman doesn't just need to win this fight; he needs to win it well. This is a guy who was stopped by Gervonta Davis, who's a lightweight. This is happening at welterweight. Keith Thurman needs to win this and win it well. Win it by stoppage. He needs to win this fight by stoppage. If this is going to points, then I'm done. I think the plan for Keith Thurman, I think it kind of depends on Crawford and the kind of Spence thing. I wouldn't be shocked if we see a scenario where, say, Terence Crawford signs with PBC. They do Yordenis Ugas versus Errol Spence in a unification for the WBA and Spence's titles. And then maybe before or maybe after, not long after, they'll do maybe Crawford and Thurman. And imagine Crawford would get through that. The winner well, obviously probably be Crawford. Well, I'd say obviously anything can happen, but let's just say Crawford wins. Then we'll get probably the Spence fight down the line. I would hope that's in an ideal scenario. I would imagine that's what they'll do, but God knows. But yes, Keith Thurman this weekend. I was a big fan of him one time. I was a big fan of him when he was up and coming. The Leonard Bundu fight, stuff like that. That wasn't. He boxed well in the Leonard Bundu fight. He did, but he had some other fights before that where he was really looking good, looking like one time. And then it just was like when he won that WBA title, it was like the hunger waned. It didn't go away because obviously he had a great fight with Sean Porter, which was a brilliant fight. I mean, if you've never seen, there's another. I'm recommending some great fights here. Sean Porter versus Keith Thurman. You gotta watch that fight. I mean, there was no knockdowns in that fight, but it was action packed all the way through. It was great. Thurman was hurt to the body in that fight a couple of times actually. It was a great fight, really, really good fight. And he had fire there, but it was like after the Garcia fight happened, it was just like, I've unified, I've got my 2 titles, I'm happy. You know, I'm a happy boy. And he was getting well paid for all them fights as well. So, again, I wonder what's left for Keith Thurman. I don't know. We'll need to see how he looks this weekend. I'll be interested to see, for sure. Watch the space with Keith Thurman. I will leave you there, lads and lassies. I hope. It's going out in the morning. Will I do it in the morning? Yeah, I'll probably upload it in the morning. Or actually, it's not that late. I might even get it out tonight, actually. We'll see how long it takes me to get this up to YouTube. But, lads and lassies, for now, I leave you with that. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you are listening to it, and it is Thursday morning, I hope I get you through your day. I hope I've killed about 20 minutes, give or take, in around that. I hope I get you through some of it. If you could, lads and lassies, smash the like button. It helps your boy out big time. It does. It really does. I know people always say, like, I used to always wonder why people would say smash the like button. Believe it or not, it really does help. It genuinely does. So if you could, smash the like button, hit subscribe if you haven't already, and the all notification bell. Help your boy out. For now, lads and lassies, I'll talk to you. Peace.